Historians still debate where the Sumerians came from. Some believe they arrived in Mesopotamia from Central Asia, already possessing a very high level of culture. Others suggest that these people formed as a result of primitive tribes conquering an advanced country, thereby enriching themselves culturally. In the modern territories of Romania and Hungary, burial sites from the 6th millennium BC have been found with cylindrical clay tablets familiar to Orientalists. The written symbols on them are identical to Sumerian writing, and it seems likely that the Sumerians temporarily colonized these territories as they expanded into the Balkans. This may have been linked to the development of shipbuilding and the exploration of waterways. Orientalists V. Christian and B. Grozny see many analogies between Sumerian and Tibeto-Burman cultures and suggest that the black-headed people, as the Sumerians called themselves, may have migrated to Asia in the Neolithic era. Linguist Jan Brown also believes that there are many similarities between the Sumerian language and Tibeto-Burman languages. At the same time, a clear connection between Sumerian and Egyptian cultures is evident. It should be noted that the Greek and Latin alphabets originated from ancient Eastern scripts, but their roots lie in Sumerian and Semitic glyphs. Interestingly, the Sumerians themselves remember nothing of their primitive era. They associate the oldest period of their history with the appearance of writing, which is no less than 11,000 to 12,000 years old. Even then, they spoke with disdain about nomadic tribes, people who know not houses and grow no wheat. Professor S. Kramer believes that the Sumerians possessed writing before they arrived in Mesopotamia. But where did they come from? There is no answer, and the conclusion of years of historical debate remains the same today. Regarding the origins of the Sumerians, we know only that we know nothing. Thus, in a historical sense, the final Sumerian civilization emerged literally overnight, seemingly out of nowhere, at least 8,000 to 9,000 years ago. Even more surprising is that it appeared almost immediately, with virtually all the attributes of a highly developed culture. Let us list some of the achievements of the Sumerians. The wheel and war chariots, boats and ships, kilns for firing clay and bricks, the construction of tall buildings and majestic temples, advanced metallurgy with alloy-making technology, including gold alloys, and jewelry making that surpasses the skill of modern jewelers. They had schools and writing, laws of righteous conduct, judges, and a jury system. Sumerians also established a monarchy, a bicameral system of elected deputies and civic councils. Bureaucracy and customs systems were in place. They developed music and musical instruments, dance and art, sculpture, poetry, fables, and proverbs. The Sumerians invented cosmetics and produced artificial minerals, such as lapis lazuli. They had knowledge of chemistry and medicine, utilizing anatomical understanding, surgical tools, and pharmaceuticals. They performed surgical and eye operations. Their textile industry was developed, and they applied advanced farming methods. Sumerians built dams, locks, and irrigation systems with mathematically justified layouts for the irrigation canals. They grew grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruits, and their agriculture and livestock were well developed. Sumerians had a highly developed religion with priests, flags, and ziggurats. These were special temples between 20 and 90 meters high, which also served as observatories. They had baths, soap, and sewage systems, as well as beer and wine. They even created clay envelopes and nails. All this and much more existed in Sumer. It is also significant that Sumerian texts contain information about pre-flood times, the flood itself, and the events that followed. There are countless historical, scientific, and other mysteries associated with this civilization. The fact that almost all of this emerged in a short time and on such a localized, climatically challenging territory is still considered a difficult-to-explain miracle. Dead lands were quickly transformed into a flourishing region where fields, gardens, and orchards yielded bountiful harvests, so much so that there was soon a surplus of products and goods. Sumerians built enormous temples and created remarkable works of art, while nearby wild tribes still lived in primitive conditions. Where did such diligence and astounding knowledge and technologies come from? Many fascinating books have been written on Sumerian culture. All of them are filled with mind-boggling facts. The most impressive are the works of American professor Samuel Kramer, an authority in Sumerian literature, writing, and culture. However, the mysteries of the vanished civilization remain unsolved in these books. Since the inhabited areas of Sumer were far from the mountains, stone was in short supply. Therefore, boulders and stone were highly valued and primarily used to create depictions of gods, important inscriptions, and so-called cylindrical seals. Clay, of course, was the main building and writing material. Sumerians understood that unfired clay products were not durable, so they fired long-term use items in special kilns. However, firing required wood, which was also in short supply, so only important documents and building materials for temples were fired. Sumerian scribes wrote on wet clay tablets, and they made illustrations and personal seals on cylindrical seals, where the images were created in reverse, so that rolling the cylinder over wet clay would create a positive image. This method of storing information proved practical and durable, and cylindrical seals were still in use in the first millennium BC. Special thanks should go to the countless ancient scribes and translators of Babylon and Assyria, who copied and translated ancient texts century after century, often without understanding the meaning of certain terms. It is thanks to them that we have access to the unaltered ancient sources and new scientific treatises, cosmological and theological texts, lyrical works, collections of spells and prophecies, poems and epics, historical writings, various recipes, psalms, hymns to the gods, and even lullabies. Personal information, such as daily schedules, study and work habits, as well as moral teachings, have played a special role in understanding Sumerian life and worldview. As mentioned earlier, around 25,000 tablets were discovered in the Ashurbanipal library. Interestingly, among them was one of the library catalogues, a tablet measuring 6.5 by 3.5 centimeters, which listed the titles of 62 works. It has been established that the Sumerians laid the foundation for modern knowledge of mathematics and astronomy. Numerous complex astronomical tables were found in the library of King Ashurbanipal, containing lists of stars and planets, rules for calculating astronomical events, positions of the moon and planets, lunar and solar eclipses, and results of these calculations, so-called ephemerides, including predictions of daily positions of the moon, planets, and the sun, as well as eclipse predictions for 50 years ahead. Some Orientalists believe all this was needed for performing religious rituals and astrology, whose foundation was laid in Mesopotamia. However, astrology required precise and extensive knowledge of astronomy in general, as noted by R. Thompson, who studied texts from the first millennium BC. Therefore, even in this case, astronomy occupied an honorable and independent place among the Sumerian sciences. One of the astronomical texts is Enuma Anu Enlil. Its 23 tablets contain detailed descriptions of the positions of the moon and the sun, planets and stars, and meteorological phenomena. They interpret astrological connections and describe the movement of planets, unusual cloud formations, and certain so-called radiances. In modern astronomy, such publications also exist and are called astronomical calendars. As Professor George Sarton established, ancient Mesopotamians knew 3 ways of calculating distances between fixed stars. The older method from Uruk turned out to be the most elegant and accurate. This undoubtedly gave Sumerian priests the ability to compile star catalogues and maps. Incidentally, the first star map came to us from that same Sumerian kingdom. At least, Europeans in the form of the Greeks received such maps with the names of constellations and stars from the Hittites, who, in turn, borrowed them from the priests of Mesopotamia. What is interesting is that Professor O. Neugebauer, who specialized in the study of ancient astronomy and mathematics, concluded that Babylonian astronomers did not know the theory that would allow them to make such complex calculations. This suggests that they borrowed ready-made methods of calculation from another civilization that was more experienced in mathematics. However, Sumerian knowledge in mathematics was extensive. Practical aspects of this science were fundamental. such as calculating areas of complex shapes and the rule now known as the Pythagorean theorem. They extracted square roots and solved equations with 2 and 3 unknowns. Even the well-known golden ratio and Fibonacci numbers were actively used in construction and various calculations.